Okay. So, let's go back to 2 Kings now. Continue on. So Ahaz, let's go ahead and read the last couple of verses we already read before. 2 Kings chapter 16, starting in verse 7. Ahaz sent messengers to say to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, I am your servant and vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram, and out of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. And Ahaz took of the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord, and in the treasuries of the royal palace, and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria complied by attacking Damascus and capturing it. He deported its inhabitants to Kir and put Rezin to death. By the way, this fulfills one of Amos's prophecies. We read Amos last time, of course, and Amos said that that God was going to send the Arameans back to where they came from, which is this place called Kir, wherever that is. Amos, of course, would have come along about 20 years before this, at this point. We're now down to the late 730s BC, and Amos's ministry would have been sometime in the 750s BC, as we talked about when we read Amos. 2 verses in Amos I'm going to read here. Amos 1 verse 5. Well, let's go ahead and start in verse 3. Amos chapter 1 verse 3. This is what the Lord says. This is how he actually starts his message to the people of Israel. For 3 sins of Damascus, even for 4, I will not turn back my wrath. Because she threshed Gilead with sledges having iron teeth, I will send fire upon the house of Hazael, that will consume the fortresses of Ben-Hadad. I will break down the gate of Damascus. I will destroy the king who is in the valley of Avon, and the one who holds the scepter in Beth-Eden. The people of Aram will go into exile to Kir, says the Lord. So that has now happened. God has fulfilled that word of Amos in the person of the king of Assyria, who is actually the one executing his judgment on God's behalf, although obviously the king of Assyria doesn't think he's doing it on God's behalf. At the end of the book of Amos, he's talking to Israel about their exodus from Egypt. And he says, did I not bring Israel up from Egypt, the Philistines from Caphtor, which is an island somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea, and the Arameans from Kir? So wherever the Arameans came from, wherever Kir is, they're going back there. Amos said they would, and now they have. The king of Assyria has caused that to happen in accordance with the word of the Lord. Then King Ahaz, and this is the guy that Ahaz wants to put his faith in. He wants to put his faith in this king of Assyria because he's tough, he's strong. Then King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. He saw an altar in Damascus and sent to Uriah the priest a sketch of the altar with detailed plans for its construction. I don't know if this is the same Uriah that Isaiah was talking about. That Uriah was called by God himself to be a reliable witness. This Uriah builds a false altar. Maybe it's the same guy, maybe it's different, I don't know. So Uriah the priest built an altar in accordance with all the plans that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus, and finished it before King Ahaz returned. I don't know how long it takes him to get there. I don't know, but at any rate, when the king came back from Damascus and saw the altar, he approached it and presented offerings on it. He offered up his burnt offering and grain offering, poured out his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his fellowship offerings on the altar. The bronze altar that stood before the Lord, he brought from this is the actual proper altar here, he brought that from the front of the temple, from between the new altar and the temple of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the new altar. Now, we read back in Numbers, when they first arranged the tabernacle and set up camp around it, that the north side was the least important side. Today, we orient our compasses and our cardinal sense of direction around the north, okay? Today, north is the most important direction. That's where the North Pole is. We orient our compasses towards the North Pole. We orient our compasses towards north, and we orient all of our directions around which way is north. That was not the way back in this day and time. In this day and time, all their directions were oriented around the east, because that's the direction the sun came up from. And so when you would stand, so the way they call directions in this day and time was they faced east, which is the direction the sun came from, and then they would call out whether they're looking right or left or whatever. Remember, the right side was the dominant side. Okay, so if you're facing east, to your right is the south, and if you're facing south, to the right is the west, and if you're facing west, to the right is the north. So from east to south to west to north is the descending order of importance in their directional system. So east is most important. I'm just pointing this way because on a map it's north, east, south, west. And then south, and then west, and then north. Okay, so putting God's altar on the north side of the altar is a deliberate way of saying it's on the least important side of the altar. King Ahaz then gave these orders to Uriah the priest. On the large new altar, offer the morning burnt offering and the evening grain offering, the king's burnt offering and his grain offering. I don't know where this comes from. There's no provision in the law of Moses for this, but I suppose at some time from the days of Solomon or sometime after that, they developed a tradition of the king offering his own sacrifices or his own offering separate from the actual required sacrifices as given in the book of Moses. And the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their grain offering and their drink offering. Sprinkle on the altar all the blood of the burnt offerings and sacrifices. That's going to happen on the new altar, the new false altar. But I will use the bronze altar for seeking guidance. And Uriah the priest did just as King Ahaz had ordered. I don't know if he's seeking guidance from the real God or from any of these other fake, probably not, honestly. He had Isaiah there. You'd already seen him interact with Isaiah once. He's probably making up his own things about offering, seeking guidance from other gods. King Ahaz took away the side panels and removed the basins and the movable stands. We can read about those things back in the construction of the temple at the beginning of 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles. He removed the sea, that's a huge water basin where they put all that water in, from the bronze bowls, where they had this circle of 12 bowls that supported this big, huge basin, that supported it, and set it on a stone base. He took away the Sabbath canopy that had been built at the temple, and removed the royal entryway outside the temple of the Lord, in deference to the king of Assyria. So all of this, presumably, he's doing to please his new master, the king of Assyria. As to the other events of the reign of Ahaz and what he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Ahaz rested with his fathers, and was buried with them in the city of David. And Hezekiah his son succeeded him as king. So now let's read the 2 Chronicles, the rest of the 2 Chronicles account about Ahaz. 2 Chronicles 28, starting in verse 16. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help. The Edomites had again come and attacked Judah and carried away prisoners, while the Philistines had raided towns in the foothills and the Negev of Judah. They captured and occupied Beth Shemesh, Ajalon, and Gederoth, as well as Soko, Timnah, and Gimzo with their surrounding villages. The Lord had humbled Judah because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he had promoted wickedness in Judah, and had been most unfaithful to the Lord. Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came to him, but he gave him trouble instead of help. He did what the guy wanted him to do. He attacked Damascus, he attacked Israel, but he caused trouble more than he helped. Ahaz took some of the things from the temple of the Lord and from the royal palace and from the princes and presented them to the king of Assyria, but that did not help him. I don't know if it's referring to some of those things we read about in 1 Kings or other stuff. Let's continue reading here. In his time of trouble, and he's in a lot of trouble, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. So he is at war with God. He is not going to admit that he was wrong, to not trust God. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus, who had defeated him, for he thought, since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice to them so they will help me. But that at least makes more sense, logical sense, than that one king who defeated the king of the Edomites and then took their gods for himself because he defeated them. At least these guys, at least in this case, he's thinking, these gods defeated me, so I'll bow down to them. But they were his downfall, and the downfall of all Israel. Ahaz gathered together the furnishings in the temple of God and took them away. I might be referring to what we read about in 1 Kings already. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple and set up, so he's just going so far to say, we're done, we're closed for business. No more temple of the Lord. And set up altars at every street corner in Jerusalem. In every town in Judah, he built high places to burn sacrifices to other gods and provoke the Lord, the God of his fathers, to anger. Here we have a guy who has declared war on God. Alright, this is a guy who has been proven wrong. He deliberately put his faith in the king of Assyria and not in God, even though he had a chance to. He did not do it. He purposefully rejected God and chose the king of Assyria. He was wrong to do that. And instead of admitting that, instead of repenting, he's just going to continue doubling down and continue fighting God. Is that not what we normally do? Is that not what we see around us all around today? We just cannot admit that we were wrong. So we continue to seek into increasingly irrational behavior rather than just finally admit that what we were doing is wrong and we need to stop it. We just can't bring ourselves to do that. Neither could Ahaz. What we're seeing today is no different than what Isaiah and Micah and Hosea saw back in the 720s, 730s BC when their king was doing it. It is not an unusual phenomenon. It is not a recent phenomenon. It is a deeply seated part of human nature. The other events of his reign and all his ways from beginning to end are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. Ahaz rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of Jerusalem, but he was not placed in the tombs of the kings of Israel. And Hezekiah his son succeeded him as king. Okay, I have enough time left here at the end of this video. It's only 12 minutes, about 13 minutes in. I'm going to read the first few verses of 2 Kings 17. And I'm actually going to skip the rest of 2 Kings 17. We'll come back to it later. And go down to 2 Kings 18 and read the first half of that. I am doing... Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and start the video.